Well, moose season's upon us here in Alaska, but I wanted to make sure that you got this interview. Jack Maxey. We're going to have Jack Maxey on in a moment. And Jack and I have been friends for quite a while. And when he got possession of the Hunter Biden laptop years ago, I got a bit of a copy too, just as a heads up. And let me tell you, it's pretty freaking disgusting. And hopefully this will edify you as to what is happening in this country in terms of how they're stealing from us, the government, and how we're basically paying our jailers to be our prison guards. So wake up, people. Things are going to get hairy. We had a third assassination attempt on Trump today. Things are going to be ramping up. I've been saying this. It's going to be ramping up and ramping up. I hope you're getting ready. The whole idea is that you're prepared for what's coming. So I hope you got your safety precautions all set up. I hope you know how to shoot. I hope you know how to farm, garden, because things are going to get hairy with supply and a bunch of other things. But it's all these people in DC who should be working for us, and they think they're our leaders. They're not our leaders. We're the leaders. And when American people recognize that, remember that, then these people who are our employees will be reminded of their status, which is they're not supposed to be stealing from us. They're not supposed to be getting us into these insane wars that are just there for them to profit. It's disgusting. So enjoy the show. Like I say, I've talked with Jack about this for years, and it's just depressing. But hey, that's the world in which we're in. Those are the trials through which we're defined. God bless. And again, watch your six.
Trained journalist, history expert, and combat photographer in Central America.
It was an illegal covert operation. It was one of the darkest moments of my life.
The Vietnamese admitted they had arrested Knight and Graham for violating the territory of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, and they were in prison. But now, the Vietnamese played pirate, demanding a ransom of $10,000 per man.
The British government would not pay a ransom, would they? They don't pay official ransoms. They always make a thing of, we don't pay, otherwise it just happens again.
I was held for 11 months, and 7 of those I was in solitary confinement.
By the 17th of May, 1984, Graham was free and returned to America. In the years that followed, Graham's thirst for adventure remained unquenched. He succeeded in working as a photojournalist, and also, ironically, for the CIA during the US war in El Salvador.
Greetings and welcome to Cork's Critical Thinking Corner. Today we have with us Jack Maxey. And Jack and I have been friends for quite a while. And one of the things that really kind of shocked me a few years ago was getting the insight into the Hunter Biden laptop, the infamous Hunter Biden laptop. And Jack has been a major crusader on that item, that database of evilness. And we have the opportunity and the honor of talking with Jack. I mean, Jack is a true patriot for the United States. And it's kind of a joke. I would talk with Jack every time I talk was, oh, you're still alive. So that gives you an idea. I mean, we're laughing about it, but the severity and the seriousness of what is happening in this world, that if you're not paying attention, you're not going to get it. But if you are paying attention, it seems insane. But Jack and I are going to try and help and clear up some things so you know about what's happening on a deeper level. And we'll make proper thoughts and actions based on solid information that you can work with. So welcome, Jack. Thank you so much for being on after years of talking back and forth. And I said, man, we got to get this out. So I'm happy we're going to get a bit of it out today.
Hey, Cork, thanks so much for having me. I apologize. I got the compressor running here in the background. It should kick off in about 10 seconds. I hope it's not ruining it.
I can't even hear it over here. Yeah.
Okay, but no, listen, we're in a big fight here, and lots of things were revealed to me by the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, you and I have spoken about this.
Yep.
You kind of feel like you're an insider. You kind of feel like you've had an insight into some of the machinations that go on our behalf.
Yeah.
by the US intelligence services and others. And then when you begin to see it in a broader scale, not just in your own narrow lane, it really it's terrifying.
It's evil. I mean, true evil is what I'm seeing right now that I never even thought about in terms like, we've seen bad, but evil, this is right at the top.
Well, listen, I mean, for example, I think you can see how the US government is controlled by the intelligence agencies by the simple fact that James Comer, Jim Jordan have never called once any of the 51 intelligence professionals who declared Hunter Biden's laptop a fabrication on the 19th of October 2020, and then sat on their hands through the election, essentially squashing the biggest story in US political history 2 weeks before an election. And then they want to talk about Russian interference. I mean,
And
we could talk.
what are your thoughts? I mean, about, it's so many years now since you got access and you took possession of a copy of the Hunter Biden laptop. And then you've gone through these wild adventures, going to Switzerland, trying to get it opened up and cataloged, and you've had so much advances on it. One of the things that kind of floored me is when you were interviewed for Tucker Carlson, and you got 12 hours with that guy, and it's like I saw 15, not even 15 minutes. Felt like 15 seconds, and it was a blip. And this is some information that any red-blooded American would say, these guys need to be hanging from a rope.
Hey, listen, I got the laptop from Rudy. I think it was on the 14th of October.
Giuliani.
Giuliani curried it down. Remember, I was Bannon's co-host of War Room. And I found crimes in the first 20 minutes looking at it. I got it at 4 o'clock and I was reporting crimes by the 5 o'clock show.
Wow.
The next day, Sam Faddis came down and looked at it.
Yeah. CIA, former CIA.
Yeah, it was real 100%, right? And then I continue to report on it. Then other intelligence people come to me with information. Look up this guy's name. Look up that guy's name. I am laying down fire from the 14th all the way until the 19th, when the intelligence professionals come out and declare it fake. A few days later, we're banned from YouTube. We're banned from Twitter. And actually, here's the scary thing. Even the Trump people, even Bannon, were terrified of the FBI. I don't know why. I guess my skeletons are all out in the open or actually dead. And these guys didn't want to do anything with Hunter's laptop afterwards. I mean, Steve told me he'd fire me if I mentioned Hunter Biden's laptop and the FBI the same sentence one more time. This was early January.
Yeah.
Right. And it took me flying out to Los Angeles to meet with a brave reporter, Josh Boswell from the Daily Mail, on March 3rd of 21, and then them spending a significant amount of money to have it confirmed as real with a computer forensic expert that they hired. And they started publishing, say, in April. Nobody ever really told the ugly, ugly true stories in the American press. By June of 21, 2 months after I gave it to the Daily Mail, Glenn Kessler, hat tip to Glenn Kessler, the fact checker. He's the one who got me in the boardroom in the Washington Post. Yeah. Everybody at the Washington Post has had copies of Hunter Biden's laptop since June of 2021. I've given copies to CNN. I've given things to the New York Times. I've given things to Fox News. I've given things to everybody. I've given things to Bild in Berlin, L'Express in Austria.
Yeah.
Hungarians. I mean, the Hungarians didn't publish anything, but I'm pretty darn sure it changed their foreign policy at a critical moment in time.
I remember when you told me about that. So what happened when that was actually with the Ukraine war with Orban? You gave it to, was it an undersecretary or what was that?
No, it was a journalist from Hungary. Anyway, I think there's some things about Hunter Biden's laptop that we don't really talk about much because it's sort of gone down the memory hole. And I think a lot of people who covered Hunter's laptop, from Marco Polo to the mainstream media to the books that have been written, have concentrated way too much on the debauched, drug addicted, sex addict Hunter.
Yeah.
Hunter and his family are actually bit players in this entire thing. The real criminals are those abettors inside US intelligence. I'm talking about the CIA at the highest levels. I will name names.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the FBI at the highest levels, and I'll name names there too. And I've been doing this for 3 years, and nobody sued me for defamation.
No.
I have backup on all this.
Yeah.
And Comer and Jordan, look, to show you how compromised the United States Congress is. Think about this. Merrick Garland prosecuted Hunter on the taxes and the gun faster than they have even identified crimes or gave their report. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And in their little 4-year investigation, oh, here's another story. The only reason Congress did anything was they have my copy, the copy that Matt Getz got in the fall of 20, which he walked out onto the floor in March of 22, because I called up his driver. I said, hey, man, I'm not going to protect your boss anymore. It's too much stuff I'm finding on this computer. So the next day he walks out, it's like a 10 o'clock call East Coast time. I'm in the middle of the night with the programmers in Switzerland. I'm like, no, I'm not protecting any of you who have sat on this. The next morning, Matt Getz walked out with it. They've never called me. I gave copies. I actually delivered copies to the Senate Judiciary Committee almost a year before Matt Getz was forced out onto the floor of the Congress with his copy showing his Johnny-come-lately bravery. I delivered copies to the Senate Judiciary Committee and Chuck Grassley. You know what I got from that? A phone call 7 months later, because they got it July 8th of 2021. 7 months later in 22, I got a phone call saying, hey, Jack, after we win the election, we promise we'll go hardcore in this. You got to be a team player. I literally told them, Foxtrot Yankee boys, national security cannot rely on you guys winning another election. And there are multiple breaches. And the reason why this will go nowhere is because it ties the CIA into Wuhan, the biolabs in Ukraine. It ties major CIA figures into the business dealings of Hunter, MI6 agents into the business dealings of Hunter.
Yeah. Let's talk about John Brennan's little bitch, Cofer Black. That guy's a freaking
Cofer Black. You know what's crazy about Cofer Black? He's got such a porcine face, doesn't he? Yeah. he looks like somebody just pushed him with a cattle prod out of a low-slung barn in Iowa with corn coming out of his chops. Just like Brennan.
Yeah.
Like of a feather.
But our favorite commie. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm trying to get it across to people. People, even back in Central America, that's why I never trusted anybody, either in state or at the agency, which was so rife and infiltrated by flat out communists going back to their college days that I was just amazed. How did these people get in here and we're fighting the communists? And then they wonder why we've been taken over. I don't get it.
Well, do you know why? Because the CIA was first created by a bunch of elite, Northeastern
intellectuals,
university intellectual types, right? And they kept trying to feed themselves with those types.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much that the CIA changed, it was the universities that were providing the feedstock had changed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Anyway, Cofer Black. Cofer Black was head of the CIA's counterterrorism center. He was the head of the Bin Laden task force. We're talking about in the 1990s. He worked particularly on the Bin Laden task force directly for John Brennan, top signatory of the Hunter Biden laptop stories fake.
Yep.
Cofer Black, 9/11 occurs. Obviously, Cofer and his team in Sudan never got the opportunity. They got the opportunity, but my understanding is nobody gave them the permission to pull the trigger on Bin Laden. But what do we do with Cofer Black now?
Yeah.
By mid-October of 2001, George Bush has created a new ambassador's position at the State Department. Got to double dip those pensions. And he appoints Cofer Black as ambassador for weapons of mass destruction. All right.
Yeah.
Now, remember that little oil company that Hunter has been sitting on
Mhm.
since 2014?
Yeah.
Wow, his father was president, called Burisma,
Yeah.
all of whose assets, BTW, sit in occupied Crimea and always have,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Still making money, though. I don't know how that happens, right? Are they violating the Russian sanctions? So, so Hunter sits on that board. Guess who else sits on that board and sits there to the present day?
Huh?
One CIA case officer, head of the Anti-Terrorism Center, ambassador for weapons of mass destruction at the State Department, Cofer Black.
So he's been profiting through Burisma for how many years now? We're looking at.
He's been there, as far as I can tell, for 8 years,
Wow.
8 or 9 years. Hunter was making $82,000 a month. I don't know how well the good ambassador and case officer is being compensated.
Yeah.
I bet he's probably making more money than even Gina Haspel is at British Aerospace, selling war
Yeah.
for profit now.
Yeah.
This is a racket.
Yeah.
Smedley Butler was right.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You
they're
know?
using our tax dollars in order to do this. It's like we're paying our guards to get rich.
And do you think there's a coincidence that the state's expert on WMDs would be given a cush job at a Ukrainian company? So he'd
Yeah.
be, shall we say, near the biolabs that didn't
Yeah.
exist till I prove they exist?
Yeah. It's like it makes us question about why people get into government now when it was supposed to be service, and it was service. You had some other type of business. You actually went into service for a short time. And because you had a business outside that you had to get back to, whether it was farming or whatever, you could not spend too much time in the Congress. You could not spend that much time in the Senate. You had to come back. We don't have that anymore. Now it's like you get there and you're on the gravy train forever.
Well, first of all, they're compensated too well,
Yeah.
and the fact of the matter is they're able to get away with anything. Another example, we all know about the again, thank me, I guess, the 10% for the big guy email. We
Yeah.
released that
Yeah.
before. I
Yeah.
released that
Yeah.
before the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Okay. The guy who promulgated that email is a guy named James Gilliar. James
Mm.
Gilliar is SAS,
Yeah.
I-6,
Okay.
lives on I mean, this is like a movie, lives on a thoroughbred horse farm in Czechoslovakia, don't you
Uh,
know? Only photograph we have of him is because of an error one of his sisters made on Facebook.
whoa.
Uh, and James has never been asked to speak about Hunter's activities. Couldn't we just call up our British friends over there in
Mhm.
London and
Mhm.
ask to speak to James? Couldn't Jimmy and James Comer and Jimmy Jordan just go across the Potomac and ask Director Burns at the CIA if it'd be okay if they brought in Cofer Black to find out just what was going on over in Ukraine? When you begin to realize that all of this is a cover up for the crimes of U.S. intelligence. Okay,
Yeah.
now quickly back to the biolabs. It's because of Hunter and his activities at Burisma,
Mhm.
Q Cofer Black. Hunter is given a task to try and raise money in a private placement for a company called Metabiota, Metabiota. And Metabiota was a company created out of whole cloth by USAID
Wow.
to manage the Ebola crisis in Sierra Leone in 2014, I believe it was.
Dang.
They utterly failed. By 2016, they're being accused of manslaughter. But hey,
Mhm.
by 2016, they're in the catbird seat with the CIA. And Hunter and his partners at Rosemont Capital, named for the Heinz family farm, Rosemont. Rosemont Seneca Partners was tasked with raising money for this high-tech bio firm, right?
Mhm.
I think people normally go to like Silver Lake or, San Francisco to get that stuff done, don't they?
Yeah.
But not US intelligence, they find some dupe like a greedy member of the Biden family to do it. They promise him a 5X. They go to meet with this is before Hunter's even hired by Burisma. He goes to meet with the executives of Burisma to try and sell them on this private placement for Metabiota. And the way we know about the biolabs and all this stuff is one of the executives for Burisma writes back to Hunter and Devin Archer, like, let me get this straight. This is a secret, top secret program. It's going to be run under cover of DOD and US Department of Agriculture. And Black and Veatch is going to be managing all the logistics. Do we have that right? And you say, since it's like an intel op,
Yeah.
we're definitely going to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Vadim. I'm paraphrasing for anybody out there, but I'd be happy to be put in a chair with my hand on the Bible and say everything I'm saying right now. And so that's how we confirmed the biolabs, and then we connected Metabiota. We kept searching, and it turns out that Metabiota was also in Wuhan. And it turns out it's Hunter Biden's family that introduced the doctors from Metabiota to George Gao. George Gao was the head of the Chinese CDC.
Yeah.
His wife is a woman named Xiao Yingzheng. I have photographs of all these people. I have people willing to swear to what I'm telling you. And I have documents from Hunter's laptop describing this interaction. Xiaoying Zheng is a daughter of the Zheng family out of Shanghai. They run something called the Shanghai Clique or the Oil Clique. They're a top family in China, a peer family to any Chinese family in the structure. They're not Long March, but the patriarch brought his army from Shanghai over to Mao in like 1946 or something. And so they're like, oh, he's one of us.
Wow.
So this was the family that hosted Joe Biden on his first trip to China in 1989. These people play a long game.
Yeah.
Xiao Ying, the one who's married to George Gao, the head of the CDC, who the Bidens introduced to Metabiota to, was the office manager for a company called Radix, Radix, in Beijing, that was owned by Hunter Biden and Key Reed, the son of the guy who got his orbital socket broken by his exercise machine. You remember that senator from Nevada? Xiao Ying has been the handholder of every Biden family member, including the president, for decades.
I mean, the fuckery that's happening in this country, in this world right now is just, it's unbelievable, but believable, because you let these little rats run and they freaking just propagate. And they
Well,
just
the worst part is all of this really happened under George Bush and Dick Cheney, when they decided to privatize everything, and in their haste they gave way too much power to certain agencies. I mean, for example, it used to be that US biological warfare research, virological research for defense and offensive purposes was run out of Fort Detrick in Maryland, right? And the Army had it.
Yeah.
No, after 2005, Bush pushed everything over to CIA. And so my understanding is that really Fauci was the technical advisor for all of this, that Fauci was the one deciding on the science in these laboratories in Eastern Europe and deciding on the science in Wuhan. I have people who are serious virologists in their own right in the United States who had CIA scientists come and lie to them in the midst of the pandemic to obscure the fact that that was lab created.
Yeah.
And basically, here's the story in a nutshell. Guys, I know you think it looks like it was inserted, but do you think we would actually share our newest technology with the Saigon?
Yeah.
And so these patriotic scientists were like, okay, I believe you. Now it turns out they did share it with them. It's this is why nobody in any Five Eyes country or in Washington of stature is willing to literally drop the hammer on China and
Mm.
create a global tort for the 6 million people who were killed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And $25 trillion in global lost business propositions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's attacking China for this. You know why? Because China would turn around and be like, well, you guys were in there with us.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons you got to understand why Hunter was and his family were attractive to the CIA, their innate corruption. These are people who are innately corrupt and are inside the system are great targets for intelligence, right? Because
Yeah.
they have liabilities
Yeah.
and they have no character. Do you
Mhm.
understand what I'm saying?
And a
This
lot
is
of
why,
them are real stupid.
and this
This
is
is
why
why
the
they're
Bidens
doing.
were able to be bought for, chicken feed.
Yeah.
Look at the real corruption in Washington, man. They're getting $100 million where they put scams like what
Yeah.
the Bidens have done. I'll guarantee you that Cofer Black's made more money than Hunter has
Oh yeah.
in the
Oh
long
yeah.
and
And then
will.
people don't understand the level of graft and corruption and theft in this nation that's supposed to be representing us, which now they think they're the leaders when we're supposed to be the leaders. But we as American citizens have to take responsibility for allowing that to shift. Because people say, well, I'd rather have them do it. Well, I go and make money here and do this and do that.
You know what, Cork? I really encourage, and you and I have talked a lot about some of your experiences, and I've talked to other people who are in that same space,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them feel used, right? And
Yeah.
I the guys who were running ops for CIA on the Pakistani border, they all
Yeah.
feel used,
Mm-hmm.
right? They because when they look back on it, they're like, wow, it's weird. Like some of those mule trains were allowed to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm kind of wondering why.
Yeah.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Do you notice how the Taliban's eliminated the poppy crop?
Yeah.
Somehow JSOC and the CIA couldn't do that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And miraculously, like right after that starts falling apart, man, we got an alternative source. It's
Mm-hmm.
fentanyl.
Yeah.
And somehow a $1 billion intelligence agency with another $1 billion for border and DEA and all this stuff can't stop this. This is nonsense, right? Right? Like, they can find terrorists, but they can't find the cartel members,
Yeah.
right?
Because there's no
Of
benefit to them. The benefit is actually keeping this
course, of
trash
course,
going.
it's a
Yeah.
cash racket. And it's no different than what went on in the Golden Triangle, in the Vietnam era.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the crazy thing. US intelligence is actually desirous, apparently, of turning the American people into opiate addicts,
Yeah.
become more compliant.
Yeah. And people don't get that. It's just like everybody says, oh, well, we should allow them to do this and allow to do that. Well, he says, why is it that we had our most successful years in America when we were keeping people off that crap, that now it's like, oh, let's have it. So it's basically just let them keep them. First of all, they've dumbed down our populace. I mean, people can't even calculate in their own minds anymore because of calculators and all these quote benefits. But then they
Well,
bring in the drugs and say, yeah, well, you can have that now, and that's fine. Play with that because they're
well,
trying to keep people inoculated. They're trying to keep everybody stoned so they can work so efficiently and quickly. They don't even have to work in the shadows anymore. I mean, doing it in our faces.
well, it's not sure that they sat down and were like with a checklist, right? But if nothing else, they've allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, American people, right?
Yeah.
Illegal drug trade in America is $500 billion
Mhm.
a year.
Mhm.
Okay, cash
Mhm.
business.
Yeah.
You don't think that ends up in J.P. Morgan Chase,
Yeah.
Citibank,
Exactly.
Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Goldman
Mhm.
Sachs? You ever
Mhm.
notice how like we take down the drug dealer, but no one's ever like, well, what about the bankers who are taking all this cash all these years? Well, isn't
Yeah.
Gary going to jail?
Mhm.
Never, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this power structure that's been created in this country that's left, the forgotten man behind.
Mhm.
And something has to change, something has to give, and I'm very hopeful. There's gosh, Cork, we could talk for hours about some of the corruption that I could tie together. I mean,
Yeah.
Louis Freeh. Let's just do this. I got to do this because let's just punch everybody in the face.
Yeah.
Louis Freeh,
Yeah.
former
Oh
director of
God, we talked
NAVAL,
about him years ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
appointed by
Mhm.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
I remember when it happened because he was in Delaware, and at the time I was having dinners with Louis Freeh. My ex-wife has reminded me because Louis Freeh's mentor was a mentor of mine.
Fuckheads, man. Yeah.
And I didn't really remember him as that memorable. I just sort of thought like,
Most of
wow.
the time they aren't. They're just a bunch of fucking losers who got on the
I
fucking gravy
literally,
train because of
she told
somebody
me I'd had
else.
dinner with this guy a half a dozen
Fuckers.
times, and I didn't
Yeah.
even remember. I'm like calling this guy out, and she's like, "Hey, don't you remember we used to have dinner with him?" So Louis Freeh gets appointed to run the FBI. I remember all of we conservatives were like, well, at least he's a Republican.
Ah,
Just like
okay.
we were with Mueller. At least he's a Republican, right? All these guys are corrupt. And so Louis Freeh becomes the director of the FBI. The Hansen case occurs, right? Right in the counterintelligence unit. That's the unit that one Peter J. Strzok is the big hero in.
Yeah.
So Freeh doesn't fulfill his 10-year term. I think he gets fired in August of 2001.
Yeah.
9/11 happens, right? And the rest is history, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's flash forward to 2016, I believe it is. Hunter has a corrupt friend that he's doing business with in Romania called Poviescu.
Mhm.
I pronounced that incorrectly, but I'll throw you documents, Cork, if you want to.
Yeah.
He is like the Tony Soprano of Bucharest. He's in all the rackets, and he's helping Hunter engineer the sale of the Ploesti oil fields. The Ploesti oil fields, more American pilots and crews died over the Ploesti oil fields than died over Berlin. Okay.
Wow.
This is the last source of oil for the Nazi
Yeah.
Reich.
Mhm.
And Hunter, at this point, is trying to engineer the sale of it to the communist Chinese, right? In
Yeah.
fact, he even had a plan to buy the railroads out of bankruptcy in Greece. They have correspondence with Greek government, corrupt government officials, and the analysis on that at the end is they have a change of government in Greece, and they're like, darn, our corrupt guys didn't win. Looks like we might have trouble selling the railroad to you. Anyway, Popescu gets prosecuted by this female prosecutor in Bucharest. She's now, I think, the head prosecutor for the European Court, right?
Mm.
They basically had to rescue her because she was the only person fighting corruption in Romania. Popescu's looking at 19 years, but that can't happen. So Hunter, through scumbags at Boys Schiller, Gottlieb, senior partner, and Buckman, who's working for another law firm, but was Louis Freeh's chief of staff at the FBI.
Yeah.
Louis Freeh's son, because Hunter took screenshots of things he shouldn't, we figure out there's this conspiracy to get Louis Freeh to represent Poviescu, but nobody could know that Hunter set this up, right? They're such scumbags. Louis Freeh even offers to pay Hunter, even though I know we're not supposed to make a connection, but on the sly, I could give you a
God.
couple hundred
Yeah.
grand for that. Louis Freeh
He's such a
flies
good
to
old boy.
Bucharest at least 3 times to intervene on behalf of
Mhm.
literally a criminal. Louis Freeh's partner is a guy named Judge Sullivan. I told this to a former MACV SOG Green Beret who's now dead. God
Yeah.
bless his heart.
Yeah.
Went to the military academy with this
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Sullivan.
Yeah.
Sullivan was the head of their honor court. When I showed him this stuff, it's like 82-year-old man. He like wept. He had tears coming down of his eyes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When I showed
This
stuff
is
that I'm
hard.
about
This is
to
hard to
reveal
look at if you fought for
when
this
I
country. It's
when I
hard to
showed
look
this
at.
stuff to Sam Faddis, he hard man. He was like, he was like, what the hell?
This is the
man?
hardest. I mean, I'll give you a quick story. So I'm with the Contras in Nicaragua. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a contractor who, former Marine in Vietnam, Marine Recon, and we're just shooting the bull and everything, on a break of doing training, etc. And we just start talking about Vietnam, and he goes, "Yeah, man, it's just like I was actually presidential guard for Johnson." I go, "What? Wow, what was that like?" And then he starts telling me this story about how he was on the plane and everybody was all going along. And he's because the Marines they're always really close to the president wherever he may be, even on the plane, they're in close proximity. So Johnson has a map out of South Vietnam, and he's telling the members that are on that plane around that table, says, "This is where my wife, this is Lady Bird, this is where my wife has paid the Viet Cong not to attack the construction sites. These are construction sites that are under the construction company that the Johnsons were part owners in back in Vietnam during the war." And I'm going, God, here's another conspiracy. Well, I get back from Central America. I visit with my dad. And here's my dad. You talk about US aid. Well,
Yeah.
the first contract he was working for, putting up what were they called?
Tom's Towers
Communication
was there.
towers. Yeah, communication towers throughout Vietnam. That's why we're living in Saigon, from 68 to 72. I tell him this, and it's like this light goes off in his head. And it's like, this is a guy who was a CIA asset. He tell me these stories about, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, they had me do this for them. They had me because he was a signals guy. So he would put bugs on their agents that they would send off to go and spy on Viet Cong operators in Saigon and whatever. But anyway, so this light goes on, and now I've forgotten the name of the actual company that was owned by Johnson in Vietnam. It'd be easy to go find. But it was this light goes off, and the reason it came that I was being told about this by my buddy, my coworker, in actually in Honduras, Eastern Honduras, is that it was between two tours. So he was like a normal Marine, and then he came back as a recon guy. And
Right.
he's talking to his team. He says, if we ever get ambushed by the VC, we DD over to this site and we'll be good. And they're saying, well, what are you fucking talking about? What bullshit? But it's like they get ambushed and they DD, they run over to this site, and the Viet Cong stop 100 years back. I mean, 100 yards back. And he says, open up on them. And they opened up on them, and they would not shoot back at them. And then they finally just dispersed. So he
Wow.
saved his life by remembering these sites in his brain, because this guy was smart. And that's when I heard that, it was the beginning of things for me to start questioning things. And then I'm always telling people, go read that book by Skousen, called The Naked Capitalist. I read that like 2 years after I came back from Central America. And it was like, you know what? I should have just stayed in the Navy, gone through the Marine Corps, got my commission, flew jets. I would have gone in and I never would have gone to Central America. I never would have gone to Vietnam to go look for the MIAs, to put me in prison. And it's just like, I just would have just done what all my buddies did, is like, get your commission, fly the F-18 that was just coming out.
Well, in a weird way, I think, you're a spiritual guy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I do think there's kind of people have to go through this hero's journey, right?
yeah,
To really be a whole person.
yeah.
And most people never do that,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like you've done it. I feel like I'm still on that journey.
Mhm.
Um,
You're in some dangerous waters, man. Every freaking, I just like, I literally I pray for you just about every week. Say,
you know
keep
what? I
Jack
never sit
alive,
with
keep
those
Jack
phone calls
alive, keep
with
Jack
buddies like
alive.
you,
Yeah.
like, hey, just a wellness check much anymore. But I don't know, I mean, one of the things that bothers me so much is I used to live on the other side of the Potomac for a while when I was in Washington working for Bannon in 2018. And you'd have to go past Arlington Cemetery on your
Yeah.
way in.
Yeah.
How could you betray those guys? How could you be a spiritual person? I don't care if it's heaven with harps or
Yeah.
Valhalla with
Yeah.
liters of beer,
Yeah.
and want to even risk going and spending eternity in shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
God might forgive you, but I don't think any of those other people would.
Yeah.
And so that's a big motivation for me. I mean, Cork, I'm going to tell you some stuff. We'll get back to Louis Free and
Yeah.
Pobieski. My grandmother was one of the first hires by Donovan.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Her
cool.
entire career at the agency, including all of World War II.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um,
Huh.
I had an uncle who was a deputy director of the FBI when I was growing up. I mean, I was raised to think that these agencies really were
Red, white,
like
and blue.
should be
Yeah.
like right and
Yeah.
left of the altar at church.
Exactly. Exactly.
And all of the people that I interacted from those agencies and those years were people that molded my personality,
Yeah.
were honorable people.
Hmm.
To this day, I think of my grandmother was one of my greatest influences, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go back to, I guess this is by way of saying to anybody out there listening, you know what? We all are handed a deck of cards and we got to play them, and
Yep.
we got to play them for the benefit of mankind and the benefit of our fellow Americans, and also to keep our oaths, to
Hmm.
defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And
Correct.
we should thank God that our founders were smart enough to use that language for those oaths of office and commissioning.
Yep. Yeah.
So back to Louis Freeh. So I find all these documents. He's going over to Romania. At one point, Hunter wants to know what's going on with his non-client.
Hmm.
Buckman lets him know, on like a burn after reading document. Don't worry about it. We've got the FBI instructors at the Bucharest Anti-Corruption Academy. They're going to find dirt on this prosecutor.
Hmm.
Oh, and their students work for us too.
Yeah.
And by the way, the FBI apparatus in the State Department is all over this. And also, we're putting to work retired assets in Eastern Europe to dig dirt.
Hmm.
This is to destroy a woman's career and reputation on behalf of a criminal who's helping Hunter sell out the country to the communist Chinese. Romania, I hope you're listening. You need to kick all of the FBI instructors out of Romania like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So I show this stuff to Bernie Carrick. Oh, also in that correspondence, there's one from Louis Freeh saying, hey, as soon as your dad's out of office, we got to get together. We can make hundreds of millions of dollars together, guys. Oh, and by the way, to show you that I do kiss the ring, here's $100,000 Christmas gift for the grandchildren's trust. All in writing.
Yeah.
Has Louis Freeh been called before the Comer or Jordan?
Not a
No.
word. Nobody even knows who he is anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, no, it
Yeah.
gets so great. And I'll show you exactly what kind of demons we're dealing with.
Yeah.
I figure Rudy has to know about this, right?
Yeah.
By this time in April of 21, when I find this, I send it to, I call up Bernie Carrick and I'm like, Bernie, man, you got to see this crap. You're not going to believe it. Check out those screenshots.
Yeah.
The first words out of his mouth, he's like, yo, bro, you're not going to believe this. He's like, it's just hitting me right now. He's like, that prick Peter Strzok. He's best friends with Louis Freeh. I go, what? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm just remembering now. Every time I saw Freeh back in the 90s, remember Five Families, First
Yeah.
World Trade Center, Flight 800. In fact, Louis Freeh named his book after those three events. And Carrick was the police commissioner. So I
Wow.
believe it. I was like, can you prove it? He's like, bro, we didn't have cell phones,
Hmm.
And so the next person I call is a US intelligence asset who's been very helpful to me in the past, and a very brave man who I've been to the United States Congress seeking them to take his testimony. They won't. That was in Matt Getz's office that I was present.
Mm.
I send this stuff to him, just trying to figure out what his take is on it, because he was an asset of ours who was placed in the middle of a lot of Hunter's deals, right?
Mhm.
So he knew a lot of the players. And I send it to him and he says, well, Jack, and he doesn't know Bernie Carrick. He says, well, Jack, you do know that Louis Freeh is very good friends with Peter Strzok. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, call me back on Signal. So I call him back. He's like, look, man, I shouldn't be telling you any of this stuff. But here's the deal. Back in the 90s, in the counterintelligence unit, they were running these illegal spy catcher teams.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, I hadn't seen that TV series, The Russians, yet. But just like that, he's describing this. This is
Yeah.
4 years ago, 3 years ago, over 3 years ago. He said they were totally illegal. They were violating every constitutional norm, illegal searches, both electronic and physical. It's off the charts bad shit they were doing
Mm.
in their haste to become post-wall heroes, right? And he said Strzok's team had a couple of early successes, and Louis Freeh decided that Strzok was like his boy, like the colonel's favorite butter bar. You know, you can ride in the back seat of the Jeep with me, son, anytime. Hold my cock while I'm in the head
Yeah.
here, will you? You know? And so, sorry about that. So I said, what are you talking about? I said, how do you know this? He goes, Jack, in those days, I was like one of a handful of people who could perform the electronic surveillance that they needed done.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, so I was the dork sitting in the back of the room. I bet they don't even remember me.
Wow.
He said, but I was present for all of it. And he goes, and he's willing to testify that it's before the United States Congress.
Yeah.
And this guy has put his life at risk like you cannot believe. I mean, fortunately, we have so many hours of tapes. If they do anything to him, they're done.
Good.
He's not trying to harm anyone. He's trying to get the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, this is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. He goes, oh, no, it's much worse than that, Jack. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, because everything was illegal, they had to protect the reputation of the FBI director and that position at all costs. He could never be associated. We see this all the time, CIA and justice and everywhere else, right? So they create this fall guy.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who that guy was?
Yeah.
The firewall. James Comey, a young attorney over at the Justice Department.
Yeah.
James Comey. And then you wonder why Peter Strzok was testifying against the president. Now, remember this. It was Peter Strzok's group at Counterintelligence that picked up the laptop from Mac Isaacs 6 months after he offered it to them on December 9th of 2019.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks later, the number two at that same office is providing false information concerning Ukraine against the president of the United States in the bowels of the Senate.
Mm.
We don't control this country.
No.
If we utterly destroy the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Central Intelligence Agency, there is no future for us. And to be quite frankly, after they created COVID and after 1 million people have died in Ukraine and after a couple million have died in Iraq and Afghanistan and all over the rest of the planet Earth because of their miscalculations.
Mm-hmm.
This is a threat.
They're trying to thin us out, man. I'm telling you, they are trying to thin us out, keep our numbers lower so they can control us. And the thing about it is people don't believe that. They think it's just a conspiracy. But you look at the actions these entities have done. Who knows how many more people are going to die because of the mosquito bite?
Well, think about this, Court. Mike Pompeo, big, brave U.S. military.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about that fucker.
Mike Pompeo.
Yeah.
You know, Ozempic Mike.
Yeah. Scumbag. Another one.
Pompeo was appointed director of the CIA at the start of Trump's term. Yeah. And everybody says, wow, Mike Pompeo.
Yeah.
I should put his hand once. That seems
Freaking
like a nice
tool. Yeah.
Army officer, you know, right? Never made it to colonel, so that's safe. Right? You know, I mean, seemed like checked all the boxes, just like Louis Freeh did when he was appointed director of the FBI.
Yep.
So Pompeo's there, promises he's going to clean up all the corruption. He's going to get to the bottom of everything. Nothing changes in Afghanistan. Certainly nothing crossing that Pakistani border changed, right? We don't pull out of any of these places. We don't seem to actually find out any of the answers concerning the Russian collusion hoax or any of these things that U.S. intelligence should have been able to confirm or deny for us, right?
Yeah.
And he's got about 18 months left in Trump's presidency, and Tillis quits at State Department. and they move Pompeo from CIA to state.
Mm.
And then Bill Barr and Pompeo recommend as the successor for Pompeo. And we don't find out till that Bill Barr was the lawyer for the agency and an analyst there for 6 years prior till after the inauguration, when he spouts his mouth off to PBS. So
Yeah.
two CIA guys recommend to President Trump that he elevate a woman named Gina Haspel. Gina Haspel, now selling war for profit at British Aerospace, was the chief of station in London when they ran the Steele dossier, Russian collusion, Misford, Cambridge professor, Papandoulis scam, right?
Yeah.
She testified before Congress that she didn't know who Misford was. This is utter bullshit.
Yeah.
You know why? Because Misford's a Turk. He's been an asset for decades, and she used to be station chief in Ankara.
Yeah.
This is in your face, people. These agencies tried to take out a president with intent. It's easily provable if we had people with enough courage to want to prove it. Did you just lose all that?
No, I got it. We're good. Oh, the internet connection is unstable. Well, we'll see.
Well, what I said is what I said, and I'll repeat it. I
Yeah,
said,
say it again. Just
the president of the United States,
yeah,
both through impeachments, likely assassination attempts, false accusations by the leaders of our intelligence service through that letter by 51 declaring Hunter Biden's laptop fake, the protection racket by Cofer Black and others to protect the Biden family, their association with the Communist Chinese, and their use by U.S. intelligence from Metabiota to Wuhan. This needs to be destroyed, people.
yeah.
This is in your face, and all we need are brave people who are willing to confront the truth. And none of them are in the United States Congress. I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry to say they are all cowards. Chuck Grassley, Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, they've all had all of this since July of 21.
Yeah. I mean, people don't understand what CIA and FBI are, and especially CIA, because CIA, we had talked about this, it's like it gives total control to one leader. That's like the Soviet Union, you know, and it's like, but the military, you don't get that. I've always said that the CIA should be dismantled, FBI dismantled, and it should all go back to local law enforcement, PDs in the cities.
Local law enforcement, and like a U.S. Marshal shows up and says, hey, can I borrow 6 of you guys?
Yeah, and foreign intelligence goes back to DIA. It should be right there.
Yes.
That's under congressional oversight. That's
100%.
ridiculous. Yeah.
100%. And it's a black hole budget. Now, here's the crazy.
Yeah.
Metabiota, remember I tell you about Metabiota, right? And I tell you how they're in the Wuhan lab and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the promised 5X that Hunter and his partners are promising to potential investors comes true because they get purchased by In-Q-Tel. In-Q-Tel is the CIA's venture capital arm, not for profit, mind you, invests in emerging technologies that may be useful for U.S. intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like a DARPA for profit. And Metabiota gets purchased by In-Q-Tel. So the CIA purchases a company that they create with dollars that came from your pocket. And insiders made a 5X. You know, if you know, let's forget the murder by creating or being participants in the experiments that created COVID-19. This is just rank financial fraud.
God damn. I mean, right? They're doing this with the tax dollars of Americans. Americans should be, I mean, who can barely even feed themselves now, and they're running on credit cards in order to buy groceries, should be livid.
Yeah, and it gets even better. By I think it's August 2016, maybe.
Yeah.
In-Q-Tel, Metabiota, and Munich Re, like the second largest insurance reinsurer in the whole world, all get together to create this new insurance product
Yeah.
for global pandemics.
Okay. This is like the medical field where it's just like the same people who are making you sick are the same ones who are going to come back to deal with the symptoms
Well, but
for
this is
charge.
really, at the end of the day, this is murder.
Yeah.
The responsibility for the outcome of their experiments is no different than the responsibility that Mengele should have
Yeah.
suffered for the outcome of his
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah.
We have a blueprint for this. It was the doctor's trial
Yeah.
at Nuremberg. There were
Yep.
two of them,
Hmm.
and these people were hung by the neck.
Yeah.
And
And
here's the
I'm waiting for when is it going to get when is the tipping point when people finally just said, I lost my daughter, I lost my son, I lost my wife, I lost my husband, I lost my father and my mother due to criminal actions by our government. You know, the governments have always killed more people, their own people, than an outside enemy. That's through history.
And another thing that I think we all got to remember, right? Gay, straight, black, white, pink, yellow, I don't give a
Yeah,
crap. The Constitution is what protects
exactly.
each of our rights to be who we want to be,
Yes.
express ourselves as we want to express ourselves,
Yeah.
despite what someone else's opinion might be.
Yeah.
And it's all at risk. Everything is at risk right now. This is literally a fight right now between light and darkness. I posted on my Twitter page today. I've been splitting wood all summer up in the woods, taking
Mhm.
down old ash trees, all of which have been killed by a parasite from communist China, I might add.
Oh,
The
interesting.
green ash borer. It's going to kill
Oh,
every
wow.
ash tree in North America by the end of the decade.
Wow. Oh,
Just like they killed the chestnuts and
yeah.
the elms.
Yeah.
Uh, so I've spent a lot of time humming the battle hymn of the Republic.
Yeah.
Let's remember, man, we have recourse in this country if
Yeah.
these Democrats try to enslave us one more time.
Yeah. People need to wake up. I mean, it's not wake up. It's just pull the blinders off your eyes. What you're seeing, you are actually seeing. It's true. It's happening. But it's like the tiger in the room. Just turning the lights
Yeah.
off is not going to make it go away.
Should should we talk about Hunter's connection to Kazakhstan and the
Oh,
start of the
please.
Ukraine war?
Yeah, let's give him a full both barrels.
Yeah. So this is one of the triggers for the Ukraine war. You never heard anybody write about it. New York Times didn't write about it, but you're hearing it from me and you can do your research. It's all there.
Yeah.
And I'll provide a couple documents for Cork if he wants them
Good.
in the editing. In 2014, in June, Hunter's now been hired by Burisma. He's making $82,000 a month for his vast emptiness in logic, knowledge about oil and gas, but he's getting $82,000 a month. And he's flying to Paris because he's going to go on a junket it's the first time he flies on a Burisma jet. They meet him in Paris, put him up at the Lincoln, one of the most expensive hotels in Paris. On the way to Paris, he informs his flying partner, Devin Archer, hey man, don't worry about customs in Paris. You're gonna love flying with me. They just walk me right through, bro. I don't have to do anything. Kind of nice,
Yeah.
having that cokehead represent us that well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the purpose of this trip from Paris to Kazakhstan is twofold. One, a guy named Masimov, who at the time I believe was prime minister, but over his 25-year tenure at the top of the heap in Kazakhstani politics, he was either prime minister or head of state security or wore both hats. And he was the right hand of a man named Nazarbayev. Nazarbayev was the president of Life for Life who emerged after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Currently, Masimov is in prison for treason. Well, in late January sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So they go on this trip to Kazakhstan, June of 2014. The executives sent him an 18-seat jet to Paris to fly them to Kazakhstan. And they say, oh, we sent a big jet because we thought you'd need Secret Service. And Hunter's like, we're not bringing the Secret Service on this trip because the trip is also a 40th birthday party for Devin Archer, right? So the head of Kazakhstani intelligence is going to throw a birthday party for two debauched knuckleheads, right? Who, with collapsed nostrils and boners, right? Nothing bad could happen there, right?
Yeah.
So, and the secondary purpose of the trip is to get the last of all the oil leases in Kazakhstan and sell them, broker the sale of them to CNOOC, Chinese National Offshore Oil Company. All of this is in writing.
Mm.
I mean, later Devin says, "Hey, man, if we could just broker these sales to China, we could be like on an elephant safari forever." I'm not saying they're going to be 100-pound tusks, but we're going to get hits, bro. These are scumbags.
Total scumbag.
So now a little background on, and you'll be able to see these guys. Anybody can look up Joe Biden Cafe Milano. I found that picture too. It's a picture of Hunter, his dad, Prime Minister Masimov, head of KGB Masimov.
Cafe Milano. Okay.
And another guy named Kemez Rakishev. Kemez Rakishev controls the uranium in Kazakhstan and also controlled a collapsed bank there. He's been on the run ever since this coup that we're going to get to that was promulgated in January of 22, right? So at a certain point in like 21, Nazarbayev steps down. He's going to be like supreme leader, right? But he's not really in the legislative process, even though he has now, at this point, legislative veto power, right? He's the old man who's going to push you towards democracy. And this guy, Tokayev, wins. Well, he's not our guy, right? Masimov's our guy. And so the CIA foments a coup in Kazakhstan in the second week of January of 22. Remember, the second week of January, Putin invades Ukraine.
Yeah.
Second week of February. Second week of January, we foment a coup in Kazakhstan. We claim it's like, the price of diesel fuel or some nonsense. And Russia, Putin sends in the Spetsnaz to suppress it and save Tokayev. Now, they captured a whole bunch of Kurdish fighters who somebody airlifted into the battle space. I can't imagine who did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's running the Kurdish areas? The Central Intelligence Agency, right?
Yeah.
Ironic that 2 weeks later, Putin would decide it's now time. I think he did it because he knew we were pushing the edge. And you know what? They were trying to play a little soft underbelly attack on Putin by collapsing one of his allies in Kazakhstan. Yeah. Because remember, the Ukrainians had been building up forces on that border all fall of 21, same as the Russians had.
Yeah.
This is all planned. And so all these people who've been murdered have been murdered to cover up the crimes of the biolabs.
That's what's happened.
Cover up the rendition centers, a fancy CIA way for saying torture, right? To cover up the connections of the Biden family to this vast empire of crime. The saddest thing is, the very saddest thing, and you want to see a little tell? This is why I brought up the Kazakhstan story. A few days ago, the German foreign minister went to meet in Kazakhstan with the president, Tokayev. They had the meeting behind closed doors, and then there was supposed to be a press conference afterwards. Yeah. And Tokayev didn't join him in the press conference, just sort of pushed his ass out the door, and the German was like, we had a good meeting. Please don't steal all the oil assets we invested in. Huh. Okay, you got to remember also the United States government forced all of the American, British, European oil producers to buy all of the original leases in Kazakhstan back in the early 2000s under Bush to thwart the Chinese from buying them. But by 2014, the vice president's son is brokering the sale of the rest of them to the Chinese. Jeez. Now, remember, we're seizing Russian assets all over the world. Yeah. Western oil companies have over a $200 billion investment in Kazakhstan. Now, to compare and contrast the German foreign minister visiting, Putin visited with Tokayev just a few days ago, too. Never seen more smiles out of that guy's face in my life. Arm in arm, high-fiving each other. We are so screwed by what these demons have done to us. Yeah. It's off the charts.
Yeah. You know Matt Bracken, Navy SEAL?
I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah. He made a comment on, Colonel Stephen Murray's podcast, and he basically said that we're in a plane, and the question is, are we going to do a control, CFIT, a controlled flight into terrain with Harris, or are we going to hopefully crash the plane under Trump and then be able to walk out of the plane? But we're still crashing. And these people are the
Yeah.
people who initiated all this crap.
This is no longer a fight to save the economy
No,
or to
no.
save the value of your pensions.
Yeah.
This is a fight to save the Constitution. So
The Constitution, which is the country, the nation. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we inevitably have to fix in a drastic fashion, likely a default on our bonds or super inflation caused by printing money.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. This is the way the world works. And now you're watching, for example, the Saudi Arabians are buying more gold than they've ever bought before.
Yeah.
And they're buying it no matter what the price. They're like on a controlled purchase program. They've bought, I think, like a couple hundred tons just this year.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a point where you could see these Gulf states demanding that they get paid in gold, just like the Libyans did. And we're not in a position to take out the Gulf states anymore.
Yeah.
Let's remember, we can't even beat the Houthis.
Exactly.
The Navy was run out of the Gulf of Hormuz and the Red Sea by a bunch of guys in sandals who we now know have hypersonic missiles because they just lobbed one into Tel Aviv and over 20 attempts they were to take it down and it hit its target.
Yeah. I mean, I said 4 months ago that the price of gold per ounce was gonna pass 2,500 by now, and now it's above 2,500, and it's gonna go over 3,000 by late fall. I guarantee it.
Well,
and when that happens, we're done. Yeah.
The price of gold is an excellent illustration of how the American people have been betrayed by the spendthrift government.
Exactly.
When Nixon went off the gold standard, I believe it was 1972, and he really did that because at the time we were like, wow, this is like $200 billion in debt we've created because of Vietnam. This is going to bankrupt the country.
Yeah.
Right? Now we got $38 trillion of debt and no one's talking about bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So we go off the gold standard because we're like, I don't know if we can match $38 an ounce. It's going to be difficult, guys, right? They go off the gold standard. But, 1972, a Coke was at 15 cents.
Yeah.
It's now what, $3-4? I'm talking about when you go to buy it at the store.
Yeah, Coca-Cola. Yeah.
Right? And an ounce of gold was $38, and now it's $2,700.
No, it's like 25.13, something like that.
Yeah, okay, but
30. Yeah.
100 times.
But it's over 800. Yeah.
Was,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've just had everything stolen from you right in front of your eyes.
That's theft. People need to understand that is theft from the American people. It's
like the Social Security Trust Fund, remember, in order to build the great society that was going to remember the war on poverty.
Yeah.
The successful war we fought, just like the war on drugs.
Yeah. And
the war on terrorism.
Yeah.
Right. I know none of those wars were declared.
Yeah.
So it's terrifying. We've got to end this internal police state. The federal government needs to be literally cut in half. We got to take a short-term hit, give everybody 6 months salary, but they're gone.
And get back to starting your own businesses again. Start your own businesses the way it was before all this crap started with these big corporations taking over and wiping out the little guy.
Well,
it's so screwed up.
Not even just that. It's that their interests are not patriotic anymore.
Exactly.
Their interests are purely profit.
Exactly. And they're globalists. They're from outside. Most of them are from outside. Yeah.
How else can you explain that the United States government cannot produce even 100,000 155 millimeter artillery shells in a given year?
Exactly.
We can't do that anymore. We used
and they want to put us in a war. Yeah.
60 years ago, we could do that in an afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all these unions, thank a union. Yeah, I'll thank a union. I'll thank your fat cat bosses for selling out the American worker.
Yeah.
I thank your scumbag red diaper babies who run our public schools.
Yeah.
Thank you,
One of them
Miss
became a president. Yeah.
White.
Yeah.
And you wonder why we are an ignorant nation. We don't even teach civics anymore.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't even teach home ec. I guess if you can't fry an egg, you got to go to McDonald's,
People are going to
right?
starve. People are going to starve because they can't even freaking start a stove. It's that bad. If they can't microwave it.
And these same idiots who a week ago just launched the USS New Jersey. The Navy's euphemistically calling it the Jersey Girl. The first gender neutral nuclear submarine.
Wow.
I mean, when you and I were in the Navy, they didn't even have doors on the stalls.
Freaking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's
They didn't
ridiculous.
have stalls.
Yeah.
Remember, it was like, well, it could be a danger in a ship accident to have all these panels laying around and some guy on the can trapped underneath all of it. You're
Yeah.
like, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now we've got gender neutral submarines with private facilities for
Yeah.
everyone. I
And that's the
understand.
priority, but that's the priority. And that's what's happened. The society has been so twisted, and it's by design. That's how
I
you
wonder.
demoralize and distract a society from what you're doing, which is stealing from them and imprisoning them. That's
Well,
what it is.
and then you look at all the stuff like we've got this new F-35 fighter. Went on the drawing table in about 1981.
Oh,
After
God.
$150 billion, we've got about 12 of them that can fly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're obsolete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? This is what they do, all this whiz bang nonsense.
Yeah.
And clearly, the future of the battle space is not an Abrams tank, it's a $40 drone from
Exactly.
Costco,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, those aircraft carriers have no defense for hypersonic missiles.
Yeah.
Now, Europe, if you get into a fight with the Russians, we will not be able to provide sea lift. So
Yeah.
you might want to convert those crop fields to
Yeah.
actual food for humans instead of grain for gasoline to save the planet.
Yeah.
This stuff is mind-boggling.
Yeah. And
I
people either don't
understand
know
the
or they
US
don't
is a
they don't
net food
understand the
importer.
implications. Yeah.
US is now a net food importer.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just talking about New York itself, and it was like 85-90% of the food that comes into New York is all brought in from the outside.
Oh, it's got to be
Jesus.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody's growing tomatoes on their
It wasn't
balcony.
that before though. But see, that is the thing. Before they used to grow tomatoes up on top of the apartments in the
In 1900,
yeah.
50% of all the food consumed in New York City came from a 50-mile radius.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even true in Iowa anymore.
Yeah.
It-
It's so wild.
well, and what people don't understand is this on-demand service
Yeah.
is an Achilles heel, right? I mean, there's no more than 3 days worth of groceries in any American city. I mean, if this all goes sideways and the lights turn off, and there's a metric for discovering how bad it would be. There was a 2014 study on what would happen if EMPs were used on the United States. And if there was one that covered the United States, say 200 miles above Kansas City,
Yeah.
they did two of them, one 200 miles above Kansas City, one 50 miles at surface level off Baltimore.
Mhm.
The Kansas City one hit both coasts.
Yeah.
The one off of Baltimore only took like a 50-mile radial chunk out of the East Coast, basically just south of Philly down to DC, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just the one south of Philly to DC, it would take all of the global production of the transformers, those trash can things you see on the telephone poles, 3 years of all of the global production just to get the power back to the poles.
Wow.
Not to get your chip working on your meter or get the chips in your refrigerator and all that stuff working. That's still out.
Yeah.
If they drop one over Kansas City and no one dies, they're like, was that a big flash I just saw?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm trying to take a picture of it. My camera doesn't work. Wow,
Yeah.
cars are stopping all around me.
Yeah.
In that scenario,
Done.
Department of Defense,
Yeah.
over 90% of the North American population dies in the first year.
Yep. Guaranteed.
Die.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
And we're so close to that. I mean, we're so close to that. People have no idea. You know, 90% of the
doesn't
population.
require a nuclear war. I mean, for example, Sam Faddis brought this up months ago.
Uh-huh.
Look, the Nord Stream pipeline collapsed the European economy.
Mm-hmm.
80% of all internet traffic goes on completely unprotected undersea cables. Completely unprotected. I mean, like they could be taken out with like a 55-gallon drum depth charge.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And this is Putin has so many ways to strike back at us that we don't understand. For example, we've forgotten in the Cold War, we could go get into a little spat somewhere and he just delivers the AKs and the right?
Yeah.
Just delivers the munitions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's happening now in the Middle East. I mean, I think in a tragic sense, I don't think Israel survives this. I don't. Unless they come to a hasty political agreement, get rid of Netanyahu, make a scapegoat out of Netanyahu and Golan, and blame them for everything bad that happened, right? Let the world know, hey, we agree with you. These guys went too far. I don't think they can survive. The battle space has just changed. I mean, if the Houthis can drop a borrowed missile right into downtown Tel Aviv with impunity, it's over.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that people wake up and and something is done to prevent us from basically spending more America, because there's already been Americans being killed in the Ukraine war that was all designed to cover all the criminal activity by this administration. And it's the whole administration, all the people who've been profiting through this administration.
Did you see that crazy video of those guys stationed over in Syria, right? They're taking mortars and stuff every night. And they're watching the presidential debate. She's like, I'm proud to say there's not a single American serviceman in the combat zone. And these guys are like filming it. They turn the camera back. They're like, what? They're all strapped up, you know what I mean?
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So we hide those people who get killed on our behalf. I mean, and also, let's face it, look at our foreign policy, right? We don't carry the American flag, apple pie, and a glass of milk. No. We carry the rainbow flag and the requirement that you accept things that may be culturally unacceptable to you, or you don't receive foreign aid.
Yeah.
This is why we're kicked out of Niger.
Yeah.
I mean, we built a $2.5 billion airbase there. It's the largest airstrip outside of the continental United States for the Air Force. And they just took it back and gave it to the Russians. And we're not even paying attention.
Yeah.
And you know why they gave it to the Russians? Not because they're like, ideologically, we like Russians or we're all crypto commies or something. Because the Russians just solve problems. They don't come in here and be like, well, we'll make you a well.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to fly a rainbow flag from it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't do that. They're just like
Chinese too. Yeah.
The Chinese too. And for decades, people don't realize in Central Africa, for decades, ever since the fall of the wall, the only people fixing anything in half these countries were Russian expats flying around in their helicopters and their old cargo aircraft. They've been there for decades and they've never caused a problem. They don't really intermingle much with the locals. They sit in their little compounds, they do their stuff. But hey, man, if your kid needs, the vaccine or whatever, or the antibiotic flown into the central Congo, more than likely it's a Russian dude.
Yeah.
And so they have trust for these people. I mean, it's horrifying. Look, Uganda has told America to get lost.
Yeah.
Ghana was, remember, the place where all of the great African American leaders were like, this is our homeland.
Exactly.
It's just like America. Like, they're like, nah, your values are not ours anymore.
Yeah.
Get out.
Totally done. You know, Jack, I want to thank you for coming on the show and everything. We've been trying to do this for years, and I'm so happy we're able to do it. I want to do another, soon. We'll talk about other stuff will be popping up, I'm sure, in the news that we can definitely comment on.
On like a sad note, I mean, listen, people, take inspiration from your past. You stand on literally the shoulders of giants, man.
Exactly.
I mean, go look at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Check out the dude who was 78, took like 4 stab wounds, three musket rounds, and still managed to fight back and kill 3 British soldiers.
Yeah.
And survived. He left them for dead.
exactly.
I mean, we are the ever ready bunny,
Yeah.
right? We just need to replace the batteries.
I mean, it's going to be interesting because I'm starting to get this idea in my mind that, you know, the way history always repeats, that I actually think that if this starts, it's going to be for the same reason it started last time, you know, at Lexington, which is coming to take the powder and the cannons, you know, and if they start coming into people's homes and start taking our form of sustenance to go hunt or to defend ourselves, it's going to be the
I
same
think it
reason.
would be tragic
Yeah,
if we ever get to that, because
yeah,
it will spark a wider problem. And for anybody listening out there, another civil war in America would not be fought, you know, in the cornfields of opposing armies.
yeah.
It would literally be taking out.
Neighbors. Yeah.
No, well, first thing I think would start happening is copycat attacks on the electric infrastructure.
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of 18-wheelers would want to be risking to drive themselves into certain places.
Exactly.
And then they'll just let the chaos of the broken American urban environment take care of the rest.
Yeah.
It
Hungry
won't be.
people. Yeah. Yeah. Hungry people become zombies, real zombies.
Need
Yeah.
to be careful what they wish for in
Yeah.
terms of that, and really, uh, you know, the communists used to say we could solve it at the ballot box or the cartridge box, you know, right? We don't want to solve it at the cartridge box. We need to solve it at the ballot box. And then
Yeah.
we need to literally prosecute in official fashion
Mhm.
the demons like the 51 who signed that letter, like
Yeah.
Gina Haspel, like Louis Freeh, like Peter Strzok,
Mhm.
like James Comey.
Yeah.
These people need to be destroyed.
Hmm. They're
Oh,
traitors. They're flat out traitors, and they did it for greed. I mean, even Benedict Arnold did it for other reasons than greed.
well, Benedict kind of did it for greed too. Best part of British never paid him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're such a loathsome creature. We don't want you. He ended up like drinking himself to death in London. Nobody wanted to visit him. You know,
Yeah,
sitting in
that's true.
a uniform.
That's true. Well, thanks, Jack. I'll talk to
All
you
right,
soon.
brother. Big love.
Okay.
Keep it the fight, people.
There we
America's
go.
worth it.
Yeah.